Hey guys, Alex Bianchi here, and this is going to be the Minds of Tomorrow podcast. I'm coming back after a little bit of a long hiatus. COVID kind of threw a wrench in things for me, but today we have our guest, Craig Selbrede. I don't know if I pronounced that.
Brady.
Selbrede. All right. He has published multiple novels, has an award-winning short story which he turned into a novella, and has had a web series for the past year or so. So, Craig, how's it going? If you could just introduce yourself and kind of tell people what I just told them, except obviously with your perspective, that would be great.
Hi, I'm Craig. I'm a self-published author with a fantasy trilogy and a novella and a few web series I've worked on. And I mean, I really like storytelling and I like those kinds of things. And yeah,
All right. Tell me about tell me about the novels, the novella. Which one came first?
the novels came first for sure. I wrote the first draft of the first novel for National Novel Writing Month in eighth grade. And it just kind of sat around for a while. And then sophomore year, I revisited it and I really looked at revising it and making it work. And then I figured out how to self-publish it. And then I really enjoyed that process and it was fairly successful. So I went on to finish the trilogy with the second and the third book. And so the first one was really written in middle school. The second one was written in high school, and the third one was written in college. So that was kind of an interesting different. Like each book was so different because of that.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it was just a big journey for sure, and it's kind of crazy that it's pretty much over because I finished the series. So
Hmm.
um, there are other places I want to go with some of the characters, but the Valley Chronicles itself is done. So
All right. Do you have anything else in the works?
yeah, I'm working on a series called The Outsiders Club, which is set in the same kind of world as the Valley Chronicles, but that you don't need to read one to understand the other. It's just more of like a treat if you did read both to be able to see some of the connections and some of the references. But I've been working on that one for a bit. It's hard to start again after spending so much time with the same characters. So it's been taking longer than I would like, but I think the end result will be worth it.
All right. Awesome. So I kind of want to rewind a bit and then chronologically go through everything you've done. So bring me to the eighth grade. You hear about this. You hear about this national competition. What in who encouraged you to do it? How did you hear about it? How did you motivate yourself to actually write it? Because that has to be a lot for an eighth grader. I mean, I know
Yeah.
most eighth graders probably couldn't do all of that. So who were you in the eighth grade? How did that happen?
I try not to think about middle school too much, but I was fairly awkward. I was just kind of I knew I wanted to write a book someday, and then I learned about National Novel Writing Month, which isn't really a contest so much as it is a challenge, where it's like you try to. I didn't know that there was a kids version of it, so I was doing the adult version of it, which is you have to get, I think it's 60,000 words written in a month. So I did not succeed at it technically because I only got about 30,000 words written in the month, and then I finished it over the next 2 months. Um, but I don't I've just always wanted to write a book, so that was kind of where that came from. And I learned about it from actually some old fan fiction friends from when I used to write fan fiction in elementary school. And they were talking about how they were doing National Novel Writing Month, and I said, "This sounds cool. I want to do it." And it was also around my birthday, so I kind of felt like it was kind of like a present to myself to kind of force myself to sit down and try and make this happen. And I really did just sit down and took some stuff I'd started to write a while ago, and it's based on some short stories I wrote in elementary school, the novel, and I just focused on making it into an actual story as opposed to just something that a kid would write, and I just put a lot of time into it. And it was pretty cringy because it was written in middle school, but I edited it a lot, so it improved a lot.
Hey, yeah, and I kind of want to touch on that cringiness aspect. I know when I was in the eighth grade, For my grade, I was a good writer. Now I look back at my stuff and I'm like, did I even know what a noun was? Like, did I know basic grammar? And even now, I'm just becoming a freshman in college, and my writing is still improving every time I write a paper, and I feel like it's drastic improvements one paper to the next. So, what was it like in the eighth grade just putting all of those words on paper? Were you decent at grammar? You said you had some writing experience.
Yeah.
How much work had you put into writing before you started the novel?
Well, I went to my elementary school was a private Montessori school where they kind of, to a certain extent, let you do whatever you wanted, even though we weren't really supposed to. So I spent a lot of time writing when I should have been doing other things. So by the time middle school came around, I was a pretty good writer. Um, Probably not as good as I am today, but I was still pretty confident in myself and in my writing, and I knew what I wanted. I just knew I wanted to write a book, and um, it didn't even seem cringy to me until I reread it a few years later, before I started editing it.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I love that just sitting down, getting it done in the eighth grade. Something I'm really fascinated with is the interaction that kids like you who are so self-motivated, who can really get stuff done, like me in a way too. How was your interaction with the education system at the time? So you went to private elementary school. Did you go to private middle school or high
Now,
school?
for middle school through high school, I went into the public school system, and it was a pretty big adjustment for me, having homework, having to um, spend some time on subjects that I had been able to kind of do the bare minimum on before. And it was it was just very different being in a big school. Well, it wasn't a big school by public school standards, but by private school standards, it was a big school. And yeah, I discovered that teachers either really like me or really don't like me, so that was fun. Um, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah, no, that sounds about right. Did you struggle in school? Did you get good grades? I mean, I guess particularly English class. Did you get good grades because you were good at English, or maybe you were doing your own stuff and you were like, screw English, I don't want to do the work, and you didn't get good grades because of that. Where did you fall?
I got pretty good grades. I mean, I don't actually remember my middle school grades at this point. I blocked them out, but I think I got pretty good grades. And I mean, the only time I really had trouble when it came to English was I had a teacher one year who I got into kind of this. It was a sort of playful argument about whether or not articles should be considered adjectives or not, like the parts of speech. And at first it was playful, but then he got kind of upset with me, and he like wanted me to, and he got mad at me, and he told me we had to write this speech, and he wanted me to, and he told me I could not under any circumstances write it about articles or adjectives. So I wrote it about the planet Pluto and drew constant references to articles throughout it, and he was furious at me, and he demanded I rewrite it or get a zero, which I don't understand still, because it's like free speech and it wasn't hurting anyone, and it wasn't about articles, so I didn't even not do what he said. So that was really the only time that the education system with English was kind of hard for me. I've had really good teachers with English, and they've always encouraged me in my writing, especially in high school. I had great teachers in high school who really supported my books and tried to get them out there, and gave extra credit to people who read them and stuff like that.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll touch on high school in a second, but first I have to say I love that story. That is exactly something I would do. It'd be like, fine, I'll play your little game, I'll do your system, but you're not gonna like the way I'm doing it, because just out of pure spite, which is that's exactly how I kind of interacted with the education system too, at that age at least. So into high school, nothing happens your freshman year writing wise. So if you go, I don't.
Well, freshman year, I wrote the first draft of the story that would become the short story that I submitted to the competition later on. So something did happen then, but that was like the only thing I wrote that year. It turned out to be well worth it because everyone really likes that short story, Makeshift, but that was really what happened freshman year for me.
Okay, so then sophomore year, what makes you get into self-publishing? How did you get into that? I don't know if you're familiar with Tim Ferriss. He's a big self-published author. Um, So yeah, just tell me about that story of taking your draft from the eighth grade and turning it into a self-published story novel.
You know, I've always been so focused in my memories on the fact that I did self-publish it that I've never really thought to keep the memory of why I decided to self-publish. I think I really kind of wanted to see it out on paper. So I think what happened was somehow I discovered the website I use, which is lulu.com. And I just looked at how it worked and I thought, you know what, I want to see my book printed out. So I printed out the draft that I'd done. And then it was such a mess and it was really ugly. And the cover was just one of their default covers. So it wasn't good by any means. But then I thought to myself, this is kind of cool. I want to see it for real. So then I went through all the effort to um, revise it, rewrite it, add in elements, remove some really awful elements, and get covers done by a friend. And yeah,
Awesome. How much time were you putting into this as a high school student? At least in my high school, they kind of there was a decent amount of homework and just things like that. Like high school kids can be busy. So where did you find the time for it, or were you just dedicated to this? Like you went home every day and this is just what you did?
yeah. Sophomore year, I'd just been cut from the cross country team. So, and I didn't start my next attempt at an extracurricular, which was theater and hockey. I didn't start those until midway through the year. So I think that probably is what gave me the time to do that, to work on my books. Um, yeah, because that's the only explanation I can think of. Because I agree, high school is just so packed with things and with responsibilities that I was pretty busy. So, I mean, the second book, which is the one I wrote in high school, I wrote in between classes, like with a tiny laptop. That couldn't run anything but Microsoft Word so that I wouldn't get distracted. And that was a real exercise in just how busy high school was because I was just doing it whenever I could. But the first book, I just don't know how I went about finding the time for that.
Hmm. Yeah, that really speaks to your discipline on the second story. It's just whenever you can, Microsoft Word, only thing you can do on that laptop, which I love that. I do similar things with different tasks. I like having dedicated devices. If there's an app for it on my phone, well, I don't want that. I'm just gonna get distracted. Some Snapchat notification is gonna come up. So you wrote you published the first book. It sees some decent success, and you just say, all right, well, I enjoyed that. Let's do it again for the second.
Yes, partially because I don't think anyone thought I could do it again. Like it wasn't out of spite, but I just think everyone was like, it's so cool that he did this, but that's it. And also because my goal for so long had been to write a book that once I finished it and I self-published it and I sold about like it wasn't actually a lot, but just for me it was a lot. It was about 100 copies. Um,
That's great.
I just felt like and it just I guess it almost like it was rewarding, but at the same time it wasn't as rewarding as I had dreamed it would be because that was my dream for so long to publish a book. And it's not real published, so that's probably why, but self-publish a book. And so I just was like, oh, I better try again. So I felt like I needed to try and make this dream really work for me. So I worked on the second book. Um,
Hmm. And then when did that get published? Your senior year, junior year, or?
The second one, I was a really fast turnaround time. I was very lucky with that, where I came up with an outline that worked really quickly, and then the first draft was really good. So that one I like wrote and self-published my junior year. Um, that's like my big success story out of the three of them. Whereas the third one was took forever to write, but
Hmm.
yeah.
Okay, so your junior year, going into your senior year, is it just real quick? You wrote it your senior year into college, the third book?
Yes.
Okay, so
And then the self-publishing part of it got caught in all sorts of um, little glitches or like my editors were too busy or something like that. So then it didn't come out officially until this year, technically. The third
okay.
book.
All right, yeah, we can touch on that, but I do want to talk about college. So this is kind of the time period that you're looking at colleges, you're starting to apply. What was that like for you? So for me, I am a freshman. I just moved into my dorm a couple weeks ago. All of my friends just went through the big college application process. So you're applying to these colleges. You have two books, which I'm sure has to make you stand out amongst a pool of applicants. Where were you looking? How did you leverage the novels at all? And where are you now?
Um, I did um, I did leverage the novels pretty hard. Um, they were actually how I found my current school because the third book, I always knew that the human world part of the books takes place in Maine. And so I looked up and found a city where I wanted the big battle in the third book to take place, and that happened to be Portland, Maine. And we went up there to visit it so that I would have an idea of what it was like before I wrote the third book. And we figured while I was there, I might as well check out some colleges. So I checked out the big Maine schools, Bates, Bowdoin, and Colby. And that's how I found Bates, which is where I ended up, which is just a small liberal arts college up here that I'm very happy at. And I just, the only reason why I was there was because of my novels. And I, that's pretty much how I found it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when you were applying, was it kind of you just your grades were good enough, you got in, you talked to them about the novels and wasn't too big of a deal? Have they supported your novels at all? Do they have resources for you to support the writing process?
Um, I, the application process was, I was actually rejected from about like 50% of the schools I had applied to, I would say. Um, some of them which I wouldn't have expected to be rejected from. So it wasn't really like this really smooth sailing path. But once I got here, I would say that it hasn't been, maybe I would have hoped that college would be a little bit more supportive of my writing, um, just because it's all about the classes and there's just, I haven't really found a way to kind of bring my novel writing into my education in a really satisfying way yet. It just feels very separate right now. So yeah, I would say that it's maybe hasn't been what I'd hoped, but isn't bad by any means.
What are you majoring in?
English, I was supposed to major in um, computer science so that I would have something to do while I pursued writing, but my school said that they would have a computer science program up and running by 2018. And then a few years ago, they turned around, they said, yeah, that's not going to happen. So that's definitely something about the school that I'm not thrilled with. But I had to turn to English because that's the only other thing I can do. And I, I'm happy with it. I haven't yet figured out how my career is going to work from here on because I do need something to support myself on while I write.
hmm
But yeah, that's how I ended up doing English and creative writing specifically. Um,
mm
and the good thing is we have to do a thesis in our senior year, and for creative writers, it can be a novel. So I just have to write another novel my senior year, and that doesn't seem nearly as daunting to me as it might to other people. So that should be pretty fun.
Yeah, that's good. It's a little bit of a stereotype. Are you considering being an English teacher at all?
No, I feel like I had a lot of drama with my high school. I didn't really talk about this, but like I wrote this open letter criticizing some of the way that the principal was handling some things that went viral. Like the Board of Education was talking about it, and I was like involved in. So my sisters were involved in student government, so I got to see kind of the ugly side of that and how they said that it was really a voice for the students, but they weren't really giving the students a voice. They were just telling the students what to do, and I criticized that some too. And so I just feel like I get caught up in sometimes the negative parts of high school a little bit too easily, and I feel like middle school it would be the same thing, and I'm not sure that I'm equipped to help elementary schoolers. So it just seems like teaching isn't the right path for me.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That must have been a pretty big deal writing that letter. I've written multiple letters and sent them into different parts of guidance or the principal while I was in high school because I was extremely frustrated with the education system. I could rant about that for for
Yeah,
so long. And
me
it's
too. I just said me too.
Oh yeah, it's why I do all of this is to give people like you a voice, and a common theme that I find with entrepreneurs and creators who are coming out of high school, who are in college, they're all frustrated with the system. None of them feel like they were supported. None of them feel like their friends were supported, and they made it work for themselves. But there's a lot of kids who either don't have the parents to help them make it work, or they don't have the charisma and the discipline to make it work for themselves. And I think those kids really need support. There's a lot of potential there that the education system just says like fit in the system and shoot out the other side. And
Yeah, and get those test results to
yeah.
get us more funding.
Yeah, that's the worst. I went to bat for a history teacher who they got rid of her because kids thought she was too difficult, and I just thought she was a good teacher who actually demanded quality work from her students. You couldn't BS her class. And of course, she got pegged down and she lost AP US history, and if it weren't for me, it would have happened a year earlier. But I basically just fought to take her myself and for my peers, and then she still got beaten down by the system. So I won't get too much into that. Did I skip over any stories in between the whether either the novella or the short story has had any of these happened yet?
Um, Senior year of high school was when I submitted the short story and a bunch of other stuff to the National Art and Writing Awards. I'm not sure exactly who runs them, but I didn't expect anything to get that far. And I had to shorten makeshift a lot because it was way too long. So I spent like 3 days just deleting adjectives, and then I was just deleting whole plot points, and it was just I didn't think I was going to get anywhere because I skinned it so much. But then it got a gold medal regionally, and it advanced to the national stage, and then it got a gold medal nationally. So that was really cool. There was this award ceremony at Carnegie Hall in New York City, which I did not get to attend because my parents had already booked us a trip to visit Sri Lanka, which is where my mother immigrated from. So that's still kind of a sore spot for me. I ended up missing that, although award ceremonies can be a little bit weird anyway. Um, so yeah, that's when Makeshift really happened, and then I self-published it as a novella my sophomore year of college, or maybe my freshman year. I think it was my freshman year.
Okay.
Um, and the web series, my first web series was also the senior year of high school, and that was because I didn't get along with my theater teacher at all. People would talk about how like she either liked people or she didn't like them, and apparently she really didn't like me. People would talk about that when I wasn't around, so that's kind of my indication that maybe it wasn't just me, because people were like, "Oh yeah, we were talking about that in guitar, how um, she doesn't like you," and so I wanted to act, but I never was good enough, and I wasn't really given the opportunity to, in my opinion. So I created the web series partially so that I would have the chance to act in something to kind of test that out to see how that would work. I wrote it with a friend of mine, and we brought together a group of friends who brought in more people, who brought in more people. It was just grew into this bigger and bigger thing. And we made a 10 episode web series, and each episode was about 30 to 50 minutes long. So it's kind of an insane thing that we managed to do that, but it was really fun. We started to put together a second season that didn't materialize, which was very hard because I wrote all the scripts for that and they were very good. But um, the web series was just a huge part of my senior year for sure.
That's awesome. That's really impressive. Get it? So in high school, you had a novella that won an award, published two novels, did a long, did a very long web series where you had to get a bunch of people together. You fought the education system in whatever way you could. That's awesome. That's a lot of drive. Is there anything that you think makes you tick, makes you self-motivated to do all of these things? Is there anywhere that you get your inspiration from? You just mentioned your mother's an immigrant, my father is an immigrant, and I think there's something to be said for being raised by immigrants, that they instill a little bit of a good work ethic in you. So, what do you think
Yeah,
makes you tick?
that's I feel like I don't understand myself as well as I could, but I feel like part of it is just because it's always been what I've been driven to do, storytelling. And just from playing games as a kid to, well, I like in elementary school, I would just kind of play games with kids where I would just direct it and I would tell them what was happening. I'd kind of run the story and then they would all just kind of roll with it. And then discovering writing, I would just write like these little short stories based on what they were called art cards. They were like little postcards with famous pieces of art on them, and we would write stories based off of them. And then I took those and I turned those into most of my current novel ideas or novels. Um, and so it just, I feels like it can all be traced back to just wanting to tell stories, and that just kind of being the only thing that I was ever really knew I wanted to do.
That yeah, so it's a real passion. That's amazing. I struggle with that because I have a lot of discipline. I'm willing to work super hard, but I don't really know where to direct all of this energy that I have. It's like I know who I want to be, and I'm really capable of a lot of things, but what do I want to do? I don't know. I'm still figuring that out, but it's awesome to see someone who's just born with a passion like that. A little bit
Yeah.
jealous.
Well, it's not the best passion to have because it's just such a cutthroat industry and you really need connections to get in, and I don't really have any connections. So I'm very pessimistic about my future in writing. I feel like I've kind of ticked most of the boxes of what I'm going to be able to do unless I find some significant success, or have a stroke of luck in some way. So I mean, I'm going to try to find a career in writing, but I think it's ultimately just going to break my heart, which isn't the best, maybe isn't the best message, but that's just kind of how I feel about it right now.
Yeah, no, I totally understand what you're saying. Are you interested at all in going the normal publishing route or getting a traditional publisher behind you?
Yeah, for sure. I have to put the research in, and I have so much more time than I did in high school, but I still feel really busy for some reason. So I keep saying I'm gonna look into writing letters to people. I'm going to look into getting something published, and then I get caught up in the web series I'm doing, or just my college work, or just my extracurriculars, and then the next thing I know, I just haven't done it, and it's been months.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that struggle. That's something that happened to me with this YouTube stuff. COVID hit, and all of a sudden I was working a lot. I was trying to my family's a small business owner, and we know a bunch of small business owners. I was trying to help them as much as I could with everything shutting down, and YouTube kind of fell to the wayside. And then there were a couple of months of just kind of feeling busy, but not being too busy until today. I'm back at college. You're my first guest since my little hiatus.
Honored.
Yeah, no problem. There's nothing to be honored. It's not too big of a deal. Not to put you down at all. Sorry.
No,
Just I'm not that big.
no, I mean, I'm the same way with my stuff. So,
hmm Yeah. So let's see. What else do I have written down? I think we got to most of it. It's really it's a really interesting story. I like it a lot. I like how it's almost simple in the way that you were just like, I like writing. I have an opportunity to write, and you wrote and you did it. Like, you know what I mean? Am I doing you an injustice there or?
no, I think that's pretty fair. I mean, there were certainly obstacles that came up, like just mental health concerns or having trouble with my education and feeling like I didn't belong in high school. I almost did switch to a private school during high school because of those reasons, and because of social reasons, and because of just the way high school is and my problems with the way it was run. But I found a teacher who I really liked, who helped me find kind of a niche in the school. Because of her, I ended up being the editor in chief of the yearbook and the president of the National English Honor Society, and I was president of the Writers Guild. So I kind of had like this trifecta of um, leadership roles within English at the school, and I've just that was really helpful for me. And she was just very supportive, and that really helped. So there were kind of some struggles, um, but I think it is fair to say that part of what I did was I just did say I'm going to write, and then I wrote.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you mentioned some of the struggles that happened with your third novel. I want to get into that on leadership though, because you just listed a lot of different leadership positions, and I think to be self-motivated in the entrepreneurial kind of way as you are, there's a lot of leadership involved with that, just being able to command people's respect, saying, "Hey, I'm writing this novel," like, and taking charge. So do you have any notes on leadership? What is it like to be a leader for you? I'm personally in a leadership institute at my school, so it's something that I'm spending a lot of time talking about now.
I'm not sure because I feel like my leadership style is so different with every project because like with the web series, um, I am the leader of them. I created them and then I'm the showrunner and I command kind of what happens in the story. But then it takes on such a life of its own where everyone is so invested and everyone has their own ideas and everyone wants to like direct an episode or play a character or they all just have their own vision that I can kind of step back and let that happen. Like I actually the first web series, the one which I filmed senior year, it was also filmed over the summer, and that was the summer that we went to Sri Lanka. So I actually left the web series for a whole month, and then I came back, and it was running like a machine. Like I just left, and they just had all banded together, and even though a bunch of them were strangers, and they figured out how to make it work, and they were just banging out those scenes, and they were just it was pretty crazy. Um, and it was pretty rewarding. But I feel like I didn't really do much there. I feel like they really just came together on their own. So it's hard for me to kind of pin down leadership because I feel like a lot of the times I get the ball rolling, but then other people pick it up and run with it from there. Um,
Well, that speaks to you and your capability of getting the ball rolling and setting a precedent that can be mirrored by other people so that they can do it themselves. Maybe there are other leaders that they could get the ball rolling, but they couldn't ever figure out a system or get people motivated enough to handle it on their own. So don't discredit yourself there. That's just as impressive as handling the entire thing. That's really an amazing feat to have done, especially if you've done it multiple times. And I can only imagine once everyone gets so passionate about a project, balancing everyone's vision so that it doesn't wind up messy and there's still some cohesion in the story and everything. So yeah, don't
yeah,
undercredit yourself there.
I'm still figuring out the cohesion part right now because I'm working on a web series right now. I was supposed to study abroad in England in the spring, which probably won't happen now, but I reached out to people there at the school I was going to study abroad at, and I started a web series there. And I actually found the people for a writer's room. So for the first time, I was writing with like six other people. And so it's crazy how that's all going because now there's going to be a web series that I wrote that's being made in the UK of all places that it's probably going to happen. But it's been a very big struggle getting the writer's room to work just because there are so many different visions and different styles of writing and different speeds at which people write. So that's been testing my leadership skills a lot, trying to figure out when to delegate and when to just put my foot down and say, no, this is how the story is going to go.
Yeah, that's amazing. And obviously, how old are you now? You're
I'm 20.
20. Okay, so you're a sophomore or junior?
I'm a junior. I turned 21 in like 2 or 3 months.
Okay, yeah, so you're still super young. I mean, I'm only 18 years old. I'm 3 years younger than you are. Um, so there's still so much room to grow for the both of us, and I'm sure you'll figure it out with the balance of delegation and putting your foot down and all of that. So I'm pretty comfortable with that. We got 33 minutes on the clock, which is fine. 40 minutes to an hour is about where these wind up. Closing notes, though, to other kids who are growing up in the education system have who might not jive well with it, who might have a passion that they want to pursue. Maybe they're not getting along with the teacher, or they're frustrated with their principal. Just advice to the kids growing up right now who were like you, who want to do things with their lives. What would you say to your younger self?
Um, that's tough because I feel like to my younger self, I feel like I had so many opportunities, and I'm in a privileged enough position that I was able to create my own opportunities. I was able to self-publish and work on and create these web series and stuff like that. And I know not everyone has that opportunity, so I feel like it's hard because I feel like my younger self was really lucky, and I feel like I can understand why some people might not. I can't just say like a blanket statement like go out and create your own opportunities, because I know not everyone has that luxury. They have like other stuff they have to do, or they just don't have the resources the way I did. So I think, but I think if I could say that, I would wish I could just say that, like just create your own opportunities. But I feel like it's really everyone has their own struggle. But I think that if you keep working at it and you keep trying to find a way to make it happen, then I would hope that people would be able to get something out of it, um,
Hmm.
and at least find some sort of path for themselves doing what they like, even if it's just for a short amount of time. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to have a future in writing, but I'm glad I got to do what I did in writing.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And yeah, I think it's a very valid point that not everyone has the same opportunity, especially in the education system, where there's so many different factors affecting an individual child's life. If we had to go micro here a little bit more, let's say there is a kid who has a draft, or he's working on a draft, or he's just getting into the self-publishing aspect. When you look at other creatives who are already a little bit more into it, they've had the opportunities, what would you say to them?
Um, just don't get discouraged. I mean, I've had some drama and stuff around some of those things, but it's really hard sometimes to find the time for it. But just as long as you keep putting some time into it, and as long as you like, obviously if you can put more time in sooner, then it's going to happen sooner. But if you can only just chip away at it a bit by bit, it is going to happen eventually, if that's all you've got is the time to just chip away at it. um,
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's great advice. That's awesome. So do you have anything that you want to say? Anything, any final thoughts on your end? Where can people find your stuff if they by chance want to read it? I'll drop links in the description too.
Okay. Well, if anyone does want to check out my stuff, it's all available at my website, which is named for my kind of self-publishing initiative slash website. It's like a fake publishing company. I designed it like it's a publishing company, but it's just me, and that's ACCPubInc with a K, .com. And that really has everything that I do there. It has links to my blog, to my web series, to my where you can buy my books. Um, and although Amazon kind of has the prices on my books a little hiked up, and I don't get like anything out of Amazon, so I would just recommend that if you have the resources to not buy from Amazon, then don't buy from Amazon. But yeah. And final thoughts. I mean, I just thank you for having me, and I appreciated the chance to kind of talk about some of these things.
Yeah,
And I hope that
no
anyone
problem.
else who is thinking about writing just kind of gives it a shot, because and has the opportunity to, and really just puts some time in when they can, because that's really sometimes that's all you can do.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for coming on. It's a really great story, and I'm sure there's more we could have dug into. Like you just mentioned the blog. I never heard about the blog. I should have done a deeper dive into your website. I mainly just looked at the different books that you had written. But thank you for coming on. Let's keep in touch. I try and keep in touch with all the guests that I have on because it's a lot of entrepreneurs and creatives very similar to you. So I have this vision in my head of down the line forming some sort of group chat or Discord server or something where all of these similarly motivated people could get together and help each other out. So I'll keep in touch with you on that. That's a little bit of a longer term vision, so it's not going to be happening next week or the week after, but thank you for coming on. I really appreciate that. And guys who are listening and or watching on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe to me on YouTube. That is the best place to find everything that I produce. It is my favorite place to produce content. If you want to find me on TikTok, it is at I will intern for Gary V. That is a temporary TikTok handle. I'm changing it soon. I don't tend to post on TikTok, but there's a chance that podcast clips are going to wind up there. And then my Instagram is at Define Wisdom, and that's all my main socials. This podcast should be available everywhere that you download your podcast if I do it right. And thank you for watching or listening. There should be more podcasts to come. I'm shooting for one a week right now while I'm in college, and that's going to be it for today. So thanks for listening or watching. Bye. Peace.